Tom and Linda had been married for over 2 decades. They met in college, where Tom was a mild-mannered history major, and Linda, a vibrant art student with a passion for life that could light up any room. Their relationship blossomed quickly, built on laughter, shared dreams, and the promise of a future together. For years, they navigated the ups and downs of life, raising their 2 children and building a comfortable home in a quiet neighborhood. To the outside world, they were the perfect couple, the epitome of a loving marriage. However, beneath the surface, the vibrant colors of their relationship began to fade. Tom had devoted himself to his career in education, teaching high school history, while Linda pursued her artwork, often spending long hours at the studio. Over time, their conversations dwindled, and the warmth of their connection grew cold. Tom noticed the subtle changes in Linda. She was often distracted, her laughter less frequent, and her eyes seemed to hold secrets he could not unravel. One fateful evening, while organizing the family's old photographs, Tom stumbled upon a receipt tucked away in an old envelope. It was dated 2 months prior and contained charges from a local hotel. His heart raced as he scanned the details, and his instincts screamed that something was amiss. The hotel was one they had passed together many times, always a passing mention of a possible getaway that had never materialized. A rush of dread washed over him as he pieced together the clues. Fueled by a mix of confusion and betrayal, Tom decided to confront Linda that night. As they sat at the dinner table, he watched her carefully, searching for any sign that would confirm his suspicions. After a few moments of silence, he finally gathered the courage to ask her directly about the receipt. Linda's face paled, and for a moment, it seemed as though the air had been sucked from the room. Tom's heart sank as he watched her hesitate, the truth hanging between them like a specter. "Linda, what's going on? I found this receipt. Are you seeing someone else?" His voice trembled, a mix of anger and hurt. Linda's eyes filled with tears, and she looked down at her plate. "Tom, it's complicated." Tom felt a wave of nausea wash over him. "Complicated? You're either in a relationship with someone else, or you're not. Just tell me the truth." With a deep breath, Linda finally confessed. She had been involved with a man from her art class, someone who had shown her attention when Tom was too busy with work. It had started innocently enough, a few shared laughs, in appreciation for art, but it quickly spiraled into something Tom never imagined. As Linda spoke, Tom felt as if the ground beneath him had crumbled. Each word felt like a dagger, piercing through the fabric of their lives together. The memories they had built, the love they had shared, all seemed to unravel before him. After she finished, an unbearable silence enveloped them. Tom's mind raced, grappling with the betrayal. How could Linda do this to him? To their family? A whirlwind of emotions surged within him. Anger, sadness, disbelief. He could hardly breathe, and he stood up abruptly, pushing his chair back. "Tom, please, let's talk about this." Linda pleaded, her voice shaky. But he couldn't bear to look at her. With a heavy heart, he walked out of the house and into the cool night air. Seeking solace in the darkness, he felt lost, betrayed, and more than anything, he felt a burning desire for justice. Days turned into weeks, and as the initial shock wore off, Tom's resolve hardened. He would not allow Linda's betrayal to define him or their family. He began to formulate a plan, one that would bring to light the truth of her actions and expose the man who had come between them. Tom began his investigation, discreetly gathering evidence of Linda's affair. He followed her during the time she claimed to be at the studio late, documenting every encounter. He learned the man's name, Mark, and discovered more about him, a smooth-talking art dealer with a reputation for charming women. The more Tom uncovered, the more his anger transformed into a fierce determination to confront them both. One afternoon, armed with the evidence he had meticulously collected, Tom approached Linda. "I know everything," he said, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. "I know about Mark." Linda's expression shifted from surprise to horror as Tom laid out the details he had gathered. The lies she had told, the time spent away from home, it all came crashing down on her. "Tom, I never meant for it to get this far," she stammered, her defenses crumbling. "Then why did you let it?" he shot back, feeling a sense of power in his voice that Hugh hadn't felt in weeks. With a heavy heart, Tom had to make a choice. He could either forgive her and try to mend their shattered marriage, or take a different path, one that would ensure both Linda and Mark face the consequences of their actions. As he mulled over his options, Tom felt a sense of clarity. He couldn't allow himself to be consumed by anger, but he also couldn't let them get away without facing the truth. It was time to take action, and he would do so in a way that would not only reveal their betrayal, but also reclaim his dignity. Tom began to execute his plan, carefully crafting a moment that would expose Linda's infidelity. He reached out to mutual friends and made arrangements for a gathering, all while keeping Linda in the dark about his true intentions. On the chosen day, Tom felt a mix of anxiety and adrenaline coursing through him as he prepared for the confrontation. Friends filled their home, laughter and chatter filling the air. But Tom's mind was focused on what was to come. When Linda arrived, she wore a beautiful dress, her hair perfectly styled, oblivious to the storm brewing just beneath the surface. As the evening unfolded, Tom felt the tension build, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal the truth. Finally, when the time was right, he stood up, raising his glass for a toast. "Everyone, I'd like to say a few words," he began, his voice steady. As he looked around the room, he saw familiar faces, friends who had been with them through thick and thin. "It's been a difficult time for me, and I want to thank you all for your support. However, there's something I need to address tonight." He glanced at Linda, who looked at him, confusion etched on her face. "Linda, I think it's time," Everyone knew about your affair with Mark. A hush fell over the room. Faces turned towards Linda, shock and disbelief filling the air. Tom continued, recounting the details of what he had discovered, the evidence he had gathered, and how it had shattered their family. Linda's face turned pale, and Tom saw the realization dawning on her. The betrayal was no longer a secret, and the truth was out in the open, laid bare for all to see. As the room stirred with murmurs, Tom felt a strange sense of relief wash over him. He had reclaimed his power, exposed the betrayal, and in that moment, he knew he had made the right decision. But as he looked at Linda, he couldn't help but wonder what the future held. Would they be able to navigate this storm? Or was this the end of their journey together? Only time would tell. But Tom was ready to face whatever lay ahead, determined to rebuild his life on his own terms. As the evening wore on, the atmosphere hung heavy with a mix of disbelief and discomfort. Tom stood at the center of the room, surrounded by the faces of friends who had witnessed the unraveling of a marriage that once seemed unbreakable. Linda, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment, shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet the eyes of those she once called friends. The laughter and camaraderie that had filled the room just moments before had been replaced with hushed murmurs and sympathetic glances. Tom took a deep breath, steadying himself. He had anticipated this moment, but nothing could prepare him for the emotional aftermath. As several friends approached him, offering words of support, he felt a bittersweet sense of vindication wash over him. The truth was out, and while it was painful, he was finally free from the weight of deception. But the path ahead remained uncertain. Linda, caught in the storm of her own making, finally broke her silence. "Tom, she started, her voice trembling. But he held up a hand, silencing her. He was done with excuses, done with apologies that felt empty. This was no longer about just them. It was about reclaiming his life. As the night progressed, Tom found himself surrounded by friends who wanted to offer comfort, but he felt a lingering emptiness. Their concern was genuine, but it highlighted the loss he had just suffered. He had invested over 2 decades into a relationship that had turned out to be a facade. He thought about the years of laughter, shared dreams, and the family they had built together. It felt like a lifetime ago. Before long, Linda slipped out of the house, unable to bear the weight of the situation any longer. Tom watched her go, feeling a mixture of anger and sadness. He knew she was hurt, but the pain she had inflicted on him was still fresh. As he turned back to his friends, he resolved to focus on his own healing rather than wallowing in the bitterness of betrayal. Days turned into weeks, and Tom found solace in the routine of his life. He immersed himself in his teaching, finding purpose in the young minds he was nurturing. He began to reconnect with old friends, rediscovering passions he had set aside for the sake of his marriage. He took long walks in the park, wrote in a journal, and even attended a pottery class, something he had always wanted to try. Each step felt like reclaiming a small piece of himself that had been overshadowed by doubt and heartache. Yet as the initial shock of Linda's betrayal faded, so did the clarity of Tom's resolve. He often found himself staring at their wedding photos, reminiscing about happier times. He remembered the promises they had made to each other, the vows exchanged in front of family and friends. The weight of those memories pressed heavily upon him, coaxing out feelings he thought he had buried. One evening, while flipping through the journal he had started, he penned a letter to Linda, pouring out his heart. He expressed his pain and disappointment, but also his wish for her to find happiness, even if it was not with him. He understood that harboring anger would only keep him tethered to the past. Tom folded the letter neatly, tucking it away for the right moment. Weeks passed, and one afternoon, he received a call from Linda, asking if they could meet. The conversation was awkward at first, filled with the remnants of their past, but also the potential for healing. They met at a cafe where the aroma of coffee mingled with the warm sunlight streaming through the window. Tom watched Linda as she walked in, her expression a mixture of hope and uncertainty, mirroring his own feelings. "Tom," she began, her voice softer than he remembered. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. I know I hurt you, and I can't take that back. But I want to talk about us, what happened, and where we go from here." Tom took a moment, weighing his response carefully. He had spent so much time building walls around his heart, but he also recognized the importance of vulnerability. "Linda, I think we both need to understand what led us here. I can't pretend everything is fine, but I also can't ignore the years we shared." They spoke for hours, sharing their thoughts and feelings. The conversation ebbing and flowing like the tide. Tom listened as Linda expressed her regrets, her struggles with self-identity, and how the affair had spiraled out of control. He opened up about his own emotional neglect, how he had focused so much on work that he had inadvertently distanced himself from her. As they talked, the connection that had once drawn them together began to surface, albeit in a different form. They were no longer the same couple who had exchanged vows years ago. They were two individuals, scarred, yet willing to confront the past for the sake of their futures. The dialogue didn't magically mend their relationship, but it laid a foundation for understanding. Tom realized that while their marriage may not be salvageable, there was an opportunity for closure. He found a sense of empathy for Linda, an emotion he thought would be impossible now. As they parted ways, Tom felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had faced the truth of his marriage and emerged stronger, ready to embrace the next chapter of his life. While Linda was a part of his story, he knew it was time to write a new one for himself, one filled with growth, resilience, and perhaps even love again one day. In the weeks that followed, Tom focused on his own happiness, exploring new activities, and reconnecting with friends. He also took the time to reflect deeply on his values and what he truly wanted from life. However, one lingering thought occupied his mind. What about Mark, the man who had crossed the line and disrupted his life? The idea of confronting Mark had simmered in Tom's thoughts, a lingering ember of rage that refused to extinguish. He wasn't a man consumed by vengeance, but he felt a need for closure, a way to reclaim his dignity, not just from Linda, but from the man who had taken advantage of their situation. It was time to face Mark, to confront the man who had played a role in shattering his world. Tom began to strategize. He reached out to a few mutual acquaintances to gather more information about Mark. Learning about his background and interests, he discovered that Mark was not just an artist, but had ambitions of showcasing his work at local. He envisioned a meeting, one where he could speak his mind and express the impact of Mark's actions without resorting to hostility. As the weekend approached, he felt a sense of anticipation. He had decided to attend one of Mark's art showcases, an event that would allow him to approach the man face to face. On the day of the event, Tom put on his best suit, a stark contrast to the casual attire of the gallery setting. He felt the nerves tingling in his stomach as he entered the gallery, the walls adorned with vibrant pieces of art that reflected Mark's creativity. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement, but Tom's focus was singular. He scanned the room, searching for the man who had changed the course of his life. Finally, he spotted Mark, standing in the corner, engaged in conversation with a small group of admirers. Tom took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation. As he approached, he caught snippets of Mark's laughter, the way he charmed everyone around him. For a moment, doubt crept into Tom's mind. Was this the right thing to do? But as he drew closer, he thought of all the months of pain, the betrayal, and the heartache. He had to do this for himself, if nothing else. He tapped Mark on the shoulder, and when Mark turned around, surprise washed over his face. "Tom," he said, feigning a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I didn't expect to see you here. Can we talk?" Tom's voice was steady, a contrast to the turmoil inside him. Mark nodded, and they stepped away from the crowd, the noise of the gallery fading into the background as they found a quiet corner. "Listen, I don't want to make a scene," Tom started, his heart racing. "But I think we need to acknowledge what happened between you and Linda." Mark shifted uncomfortably, his bravado faltering. "I didn't mean to hurt you. It just happened. I didn't want to get involved." "Didn't want to get involved?" Tom echoed, incredulous. "You knew she was married. You made a choice, and that choice hurt a lot of people." Mark looked down, guilt etched across his features. "I know. I'm sorry. I messed up." Tom took a deep breath, trying to maintain control. "I want you to understand the impact of your actions. It's not just about Linda and me. It's about the trust that was shattered, the lives you disrupted. I'm not here to fight you, but I need you to acknowledge the pain it caused. There was a moment of silence between them, and Tom could see the weight of reality settling on Mark. Finally, he nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. I understand. I really do. Tom felt a flicker of something. Was it closure? Perhaps. He didn't need Mark's forgiveness, but he wanted him to grasp the consequences of his choices. I hope you learn from this, for your sake and for anyone else you might be involved with in the future. Life is too short to hurt others carelessly. With that, Tom turned to leave. As he walked away, he felt lighter, as though a burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He had faced Mark, expressed his feelings, and stood his ground. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming his life and moving forward with dignity. Tom left the gallery that night with a renewed sense of purpose. He knew life would continue to throw challenges his way, but he had taken a significant step toward healing. With time, he would learn to let go of the past and embrace the future, one filled with hope, resilience, and the possibility of new beginnings. And while he may have lost Linda, he was determined not to lose himself in the process. The journey ahead was his to shape, and he was ready to embrace it, ready to write the next chapter of his life, one filled with promise and the potential for happiness once again.